What's going on, guys? I'm Dave.
And I'm Dylan.
And this is our review of Best Month Ever. We'll be sticking to the first 3 chapters of the game so as not to spoil any of the game's deep moments, and we want you guys to experience it for yourselves. Big thanks to Klabater and the Warsaw Film and Video Game Studio for giving us a review copy of this game.
Best Month Ever is a narrative-driven point-and-click adventure game that takes you on a roller coaster of emotions throughout the 1960s. Taking control of Louise and her son Mitch, who travel down a path guided by your decisions, will ultimately impact the man Mitch will become as an adult.
Stricken by an illness, leaving Louise with just a month left to live, she ventures out to give Mitch the best month ever and hopefully find a place for him to stay when their time is up. With Mitch being unaware of her illness and the severity of it, Louise has to do the impossible task of finding a home for Mitch while masking it as more of a lighthearted getaway and moving on to the next stage of their lives.
There are 3 scales that will change based on the choices you make and how you speak to Mitch. Each scenario will affect the righteousness, confidence, and relations Mitch has by the end of the game, which will determine the kind of person Mitch will become. When those bigger decisions are made, adult Mitch will give insight from the perspective of looking back on when he was a kid.
Raising a child is one of the hardest tasks out there, and being a player who connects with the characters and wants the best for them can affect how you play the game. Maybe there's a scenario that will benefit Mitch later in life based off your choices, but as a player, you want to do what you think is the right thing. Sometimes telling the truth or letting Mitch in on some of the more sensitive subjects can have its benefits, more so for the player who would want some of those answers or the feeling of being involved instead of constant rejection. How would you want the situation handled if you were in Mitch's position?
I personally really enjoy when games let you make your own decisions that have an impact on the overall narrative. When you're making a decision, you have a red or green icon letting you know how your decision will affect each meter. I think it would be more interesting without the icons there because sometimes it feels more like you're just managing your meters instead of getting immersed in what choice you think is best.
The first 3 chapters go over a lot in a short amount of time. Moving from the start of the journey at the diner Louise used to work at, where the manager still owed her some money, to Louise's childhood home to confront her family, and finishing at an old lake with a fishing hole where her and Mitch spent some time bonding and taking things slow after the heavy first 2 chapters.
Right from the start of the game, there are very dramatic situations. When Louise returns to the diner to get the money she is owed from her former boss, Hut, tensions begin to escalate when Hut tries to persuade her into prostitution for a higher sum of money. The whole time, Mitch has been out of the car and walking around the perimeter of the diner to look in and find out what's going on.
Watching through the window as his mother is assaulted and demeaned, Mitch has a front row seat to some of the horrors the world and the time has to show, quickly building his view of society and how it runs. The hope is that you can alter his views and have him grow into the way society should be, giving you options to go against the aggressors like Hut by humiliating him in front of the entire diner and getting the patrons to back you up as well.
The next chapter ramps things up even more when Louise and Mitch return to Louise's childhood home and reconnects with her distant family members in hopes of landing a place to stay for a while. Not everyone is happy to see her. Butch is Louise's nephew, who from a young age is already exhibiting racism towards Mitch.
Her sister tries to stay out of things and remain quiet, not being there for Louise when she needs it. During a family dinner, Louise is met with an ultimatum in order to stay at the house. An old family friend, Father Judah, came by for dinner, and Louise's grandfather wants her to confess that the atrocities she allegated about being sexually assaulted as a child by Father Judah were nothing but lies.
Forced with a choice of either submitting so they can stay in the house or fighting back and staying true to yourself is a very difficult decision to make when you have a child to take care of and making sure you have their needs in consideration. All of your choices can have dire consequences in the narrative.
The 3rd chapter slows things down immensely from the previous 2. After the roller coaster of events, Louise and Mitch travel down to a small lake and fishing hole, sitting down by the fire, catching fish together, and picking out sights in the constellations. The whole chapter is a wonderful bonding moment for the 2 as they try to find serenity in the middle of the mess they're in, like the eye of the storm.
The lake holds a special place in Louise's heart. Taking a brisk walk past the river, they come across a section of trees, looking for the one tree Louise marked and hid a note in when she was a kid herself, going into the troubles of her own father, while Mitch becomes more interested in what happened to him.
Best Month Ever is an interesting journey down some of the dark and serious experiences that were going on in the 60s. Stuff that can dramatically impact everyone, especially children. Though it focuses on a lot of topics, the pacing felt jumbled in the middle and towards the end, like the plot didn't know where to go without a hard turn towards another climactic event. The characters and decision-making are what shine in this game, and I felt connected to them and who they became. I'm going to give this one a 6.5 out of 10.
Overall, I found Best Month Ever to be an enjoyable narrative adventure that has a strong start and a good finish, depending on what ending you get, with an uneven middle that still tackles heavy subjects but can get a bit off track. I give it a 7.5 out of 10.
That makes the official Offshore Gamescast rating a 7 out of 10.
This game hit some deep points for both of us, and we really enjoyed it. Hopefully you guys can jump in and play through the nearly 3-hour adventure and find out what kind of Mitch you'll become when Best Month Ever releases on May 5th.
If you enjoyed our review, subscribe to our YouTube channel for more gaming content.
And be sure to tune into the Offshore Gamescast every Thursday on all podcast providers and offshoregamescast.com.